Welcome to another special interview edition of Seen Unseen Movie Reviews. This week, we focus our ears on sound. Sound designer Rhandy Tom is in the studio today.
Rhandy Tom has been nominated for Oscars across the board. Forrest Gump, Castaway, The Polar Express, What Lies Beneath, just to name a few. He's won 2 Oscars, one for The Right Stuff and one for the recent animated film The Incredibles.
He's nominated a bunch of times. He's worked with directors from David Lynch to Robert Zemeckis, of course, Francis Ford Coppola, Tim Burton, Spielberg. I mean, everyone you'd want to work with, he's worked with.
And we're talking about solid classic films like Apocalypse Now and Return of the Jedi.
And here's a review with sound designer extraordinaire Rhandy Tom.
Hello.
Rhandy, sir, how are you? Long time coming, this interview.
Quite a long time.
You're harder to track down than Ray Harryhausen, Rhandy. So, first of all, welcome to our show. You know me, and then, of course, you've met Jimmy also.
Hey, Randy.
So, first of all, can you just explain to our listeners, more than anything, we just want to kind of educate listeners about sound design. So, can you describe what a sound designer does, kind of an elementary position description?
First, I should say that different people in the movie industry have different ideas about what a sound designer does. There's certainly no one clear definition, but the kind of grand notion of the sound designer is somebody who essentially helps the director figure out what the movie should sound like. And obviously the music composer has a lot to do with that too. But in an ideal world, the three of those people working also with the picture editor, and not to mention the person who wrote the script, who presumably had a few ideas about sound as well, work together to figure out what the movie should sound like. And before you begin to think in detail about how to put a soundtrack to a movie, it may not occur to you that there are thousands and thousands of creative decisions that you have to make, beginning with the writing of the script regarding how the movie is going to sound and what sounds are going to be in your movie and what the style of the sound of the movie is going to be. And so somebody has to figure all that out, and the director, neither the director nor the writer know exactly what everything is going to sound like when they start. It's always a period of experimentation, and so the sound designer is somebody who kind of facilitates that process and starts fabricating sounds very early on and starts throwing out ideas about how sound should be used in the movie. And some of the ideas are bound to be good and some are not so good. Some work and some don't work. And eventually, after a lot of experimenting, you arrive at a kind of style, a sound style for a given movie that is the best that you can do at that moment. So that's the grand idea. The way that the term sound designer is often used in Hollywood, unfortunately, is to refer to somebody who just fabricates sounds. And that's a perfectly respectable job on a movie like The Incredibles, an animated film that I did a couple of years ago. Somebody had to figure out what the velocipods, the little flying saucers, were going to sound like in the movie. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there was no sound recorded on a film location for those things since they were invented in a computer. And so we had to start from the beginning and figure out what would be a believable kind of sound for these flying saucer-like things going through the air. But in addition to what would be believable, we had to figure out what kind of sound would have the most emotional impact. Once you have some vague notions of what those two should be, then you start on the nuts and bolts of creating the sound, which is, do I try to electronically synthesize the sound? And that's what a lot of people think that we do anyway, and in fact that's not true. Most of the sounds, even in science fiction films, and even in animated films like The Incredibles, most of the sounds are actually real-world sounds that we've recorded with microphones and then just manipulated to do the things that we want them to do. So the kind of less glamorous notion of the sound designer is somebody who is an expert at manufacturing, fabricating special sounds for a movie. And on some films, that's all I do, and I'm very happy to do that. A film will need certain kinds of sounds. That's what happened with War of the Worlds. They needed specialized sounds for some of the Martian-related activities in the movie, and so they asked me to do that, and that's all I did. I just fabricated those sounds, handed them to other people who edited them in, and still other people who mixed them. But on a film like Forrest Gump or The Incredibles, I wear multiple hats. I do fabricate a lot of the sounds, and I supervise the mixing, and I do some of the editing, and so I try to avoid doing that on more than one or two movies a year because it's too much strain on me. I actually like the idea of, on some movies, just making some sound effects and handing them off to other people, and on others having a bigger role.
Do you find that most directors have an idea of the sound going in, or do you usually take the reins and create the design of it?
Well, certainly all directors have some ideas about how the film should sound. Usually they're not very specific, though in some cases they are very specific. And working with every director is different. One of the biggest mistakes you can make as a sound designer is going into a project thinking that you'll be able to use the same approach that you did on the previous project, because every director is different, every editor is different, every film is different, and so you have to be willing to kind of be versatile and roll with the punches and accept the fact that the chemistry is going to be different on every one. So some directors, yes, have pretty specific idea of how things should sound. Most, I'd say, don't. They have general kind of notions about how things should sound, and then it's my job to make that more concrete. And the best way to do that is to start making sounds, playing those sounds in sync with the visual images for the director, and that way the director can say, I like this, I don't like that, let's make this scarier, let's make that not so scary, this should be funnier than it's sounding right now. And then I take that very useful information and scurry away to a studio and try to tailor it so that it's more what the director needs.